Hey, I'm Mike D,
And this is Charles Woods.
and we're in Philadelphia at Philly Cam Studios today for a very special video podcast. Uh, Charles and I had an opportunity this morning to attend a very special advanced screening of
The Birth of a Nation.
the long anticipated movie with Nate Parker, and we'll cut right to the chase. What are your? We haven't spoken yet about the movie. We have, I don't know how you felt about it. You know, you don't know how I felt about it. We're just gonna spend the next half hour or so comparing notes. At a certain point, we will give some spoiler. We'll stop for a spoiler alert. But offhand, what are your first impressions?
Well, I have mixed feelings about the film.
Okay.
First of all, I was tremendously excited to go see it. I couldn't wait for the official opening in October.
Yeah, it comes out beginning of October.
It was too much said about this movie, the reaction in Sundance about how powerful it is. We've already had discussions on your channel where I've had commentary about the technology in motion pictures, how you don't really get in film, as far as black male representation is concerned, strong black male imagery. Black men who are seen as defiant and not always showing a respectful reverence and deference to whites. And so I just had to see basically what I anticipated about this film. Let me prefix it this way. When I spoke about what we don't get in film, I came up with what I call, in those rare instances where you do get dynamic, heroic blacks, like a Malcolm X, historical figures,
Martin Luther King.
which we just had in Selma. I coined a phrase called circumscribed historicity. Now, some people had an issue with that term. What I meant by it was this: film being, as far as black representation is concerned, film being ideological in the sense that it's going to only show blacks in a certain way where they're endorsing the status quo or helping to sustain the status quo. If they show strong black men on film, it's conditional. It's politically correct. And the best way to do that is to take someone out of history, put them on film, and because they're historical, you're limited in terms of how heroic you can make them, or how their heroism has been conditioned by what actually happened to them if they rebelled against the system. So we know that if we have Malcolm X, we know he was assassinated. If we have Martin Luther King, we know he was assassinated. So a lot of people say, with these slave films, we never get any of the rebellious slaves like Toussaint Louverture or Nat Turner. And I said, no, we haven't had Nat Turner.
Now we do. So, so we all know Nat Turner. That's not a spoiler. We'll get into some spoilers later. We all know that they caught him and he was hanged. And so that there's no surprise there. But given all the hype, did the film meet, exceed, or be below your expectations?
To be honest, and I don't want anyone to think what I'm saying is any way, shape, or form an attempt to hurt the box office for this film. I'm someone, I know this history. and maybe a lot of our kids, maybe they're not aware of this history, the heinous crimes that were committed against people of color, blacks, in this so-called peculiar institution, American slavery, the abomination of that whole condition. Maybe they need to see what our people went through. If they didn't get a taste of it in 12 Years a Slave, they didn't get a taste of it in Roots, as it was in the first Roots, or the second iteration and the Roots that just aired not too long ago. You have in this film another instance of slavery, but you have a different reaction to it. That's unique. That should be seen. But the thing is, when you made an attempt to give away some copies of Roots, some of your viewers said what?
We're not down with that, and give us something that's going to raise our consciousness. We know Roots. That's some watered down establishment kind of stuff like it.
Well, basically what they were saying is, what, another slave movie? I don't care how you cut this, it's a slave movie.
Yeah. Now, I think I liked the movie a lot more than you did. I felt, given the hype that Birth of a Nation was getting from Sundance and the fact that everything about it, I had very high expectations for it. And yeah, I'd say for the first 20 minutes, because it's going to be about the rebellion. For the first 20 minutes or so, like the build up to it, I thought there were some beautiful touches and some artistic flourishes, but I was kind of settling down for it to be just good. And then there was a certain moment in the movie, which I'll talk about later in the interview, where it just clicked in for me. And I said, okay, this is what it's about. I see it, and it just seemed like, well, first off, I think the production value, the acting, the writing, and I think I was kind of dulled by Nate's performance early on, but there's a certain moment where he catches fire, and I'm like believing him more. I thought it was certainly brilliant and a near masterpiece. I think the screenplay was perfectly crafted in terms of what his intention was, which was to connect this story from the past to circumstances that we're experiencing in the present and help provide, I guess, a form of honoring our ancestors and connecting us to our ancestors. Like there's a spiritual element in the film that I wasn't necessarily expecting, and it seemed, and then also, he's like the chosen one, so like he I don't know what the special gift is. We can discuss it in the spoiler part, but he's reclaiming one of our true heroes, as Nat Turner being someone, because other depictions of Nat Turner showing him as being crazy or, lusting after white women or whatever, we'll get into that. I think the way he honored this particular character from history, the way he portrayed it, and then also it could have been more violent than it was. It could have shown more sexual exploitation than it did, and that's something, I think you don't see the rapes. We can say that, right? There's no, people that were reading the articles and saying, oh, well, how is this guy depicting these rapes? We never see them in the film. It's just led to, I thought it was brilliant, and I kudos to Nate and whatever the forces were to get this told. I felt a certain liberation, if not total catharsis from the film. And, even though we don't know the true facts of Nat Turner's life, I think Nate Parker's interpretation of this character and how you see him build up to that point of rebellion, I thought was masterful.
Well, in response to what you just said, what's the title of this film?
The Birth of a Nation.
Okay. That has the same title as D.W. Griffith's film, right? D.W. Griffith's film, The Birth of a Nation, blacks tried to get that film stopped from being shown because that film helped to revive the KKK, and that film glorified white violence against blacks, and it depicted blacks in a very negative way. But that is considered one of the all-time great films because of the innovative technology, film-wise, the film language that Griffith introduced. So despite everything you may say about that film being reprehensible from a perspective of being something that dehumanized the image of blacks, it's always going to be considered one of the great films of all time. Kudos to Nate Parker because his filmmaking, it doesn't look like he's new at the game. He's got flourishing touches that are magnificent. His writing is great. His imagery is fantastic. And anyone who knows history, they can see elementally, he's put a lot of little historical touches in this film. I see a little Emmett Till. I see Christ. We get what blacks had to be subjected to, and then there were numerous insurrections. But historically, as far as film is concerned, all we got were the happy darkies. I've always talked about that. But the thing is, what you have to understand when we talk about looking at it from a cinematic perspective, there's always this caveat, this condition, where you have a political correctness that the atrocities, the abuses, the horrendous dehumanization that blacks have to suffer and the brutality blacks have to suffer at the hands of whites, you don't get the same in turn when it's blacks taking out their revenge against whites. That political correctness, that toning down the image of black against whites is not the same as white violence against blacks.
Right. So before we get into our spoilers and our breaking it down with the professor, the exposing, like looking into the technology in the film and different forms of programming. So, to me, I think you could watch. I'd put them neck and neck between 12 Years a Slave. Well, Sankofa is just a whole nother level. That's my number one, Sankofa, still to this day. And
Sankofa was slavery that took place where?
In Virginia or in the South, America. No, Sankofa was set in America.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's someone's perspective, the point of view of, let's say, someone who's not American, has a different perspective on this whole issue of slavery.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's still some. Well, also, the other one would be 12 Years a Slave, which is a British filmmaker, and I'm not sure where I would put Birth of a Nation. Like 12 Years a Slave is much more graphic, more brutal, more visceral. And then Birth of a Nation, I think works. I'm not sure if I had the same gut reaction to this as I did 12 Years a Slave. But in terms of somebody who we've talked many, many hours about what we were not able to see as far as depictions of people of color, black Americans in the past, just on a visceral level, how does this movie make you feel?
I don't want to sound like I'm someone who wanted to go to a movie and see black brutality against whites the same way I see white brutality against blacks. I'm not saying that's what I'm asking for, but what I am saying is this. The condition for a film like this to come out, I said it before it would even come out. the condition would have to prevail that the response to what blacks were subjected to in slavery, the response was going to be something that would not be successful and would prove highly detrimental against more whites, more blacks than it would be against more whites. Mm-hmm. In other words, you shall pay for your revenge. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be something that's going to be successful. You shall pay for your what is it?
Your actions.
Your transactions. Your I can't think of the word, but you shall pay for this.
Transgressions.
Your transgressions. You shall pay for it, and that's clear. That's the message they're going to show. It's going to be resonated in more ways than one. That, okay, yes, we'll give you Nat Turner. You wanted Nat Turner? Well, here he is. But it's going to be Nat Turner on our terms. You're going to get a black rebelling against slavery on our terms. Now what you're going to hear people say after they see this film, well, why didn't they give us Toussaint Louverture?
Well, you see, he's still paying. What's going on with Haiti is just criminal. All right, so I'm looking at the clock. We've got about 15, 20 minutes before you've got to go back on to New York. So let's take a break and look at a clip, I guess. And this is legitimately the break here is your spoiler alert. When we come back, we're gonna talk about specific details in the film. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to hear anything, now's the time. Like, just bookmark this and come back to it after you've seen it. But feel free to leave your comments about what you expect. I think, but we're both saying go see the movie, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not going to change the world, but I think it deserves some Oscar nominations. It should get many Oscar nominations.
Yes, it's well-made film.
Definitely was some smoke being spilled with the controversy, but I think that was to be expected.
Once again, everyone's excited. Not everyone, but a lot of people are excited. Oh, it's Nat Turner. But here's the thing: we're still getting. If we're going to be against roots because of slavery, 12 years a slave against slavery. If we're going to be against the help because it's nostalgic, well, this is nostalgia. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, smells like a duck, it's a duck.
All right, I liked it more than him. Go see it. This is my show. It's worth every dollar. Don't bootleg it. I was not disappointed, but but we're gonna break it down right after this. All right, so keep it rolling. All right, so all right, so it's a little noisy. It's just a little noisy in here because other people are working. But what I'm just saying this is part of the show. Yeah, it's a little noisy in here because other people are working, but I did want to take some time before you head back to New York to get the fresh impressions on Birth of a Nation. Now,
excuse us. This is highly unplanned, impromptu.
Yeah,
we didn't get the studio we usually have, which would be more quiet.
And I'm sure after the movie comes out, we'll bring Conspiracy Brother on, and we'll really break things down. Now, in terms of other movies about slavery, I think it's not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. It's not necessarily a game changer, but it's definitely an image that I've never seen before in American film.
Well, here's what they do. Once again, it's nostalgia. If it's going to be something historical from an American perspective, okay, they'll give us slavery. They'll give us glory. Mm-hmm. But if it's blacks rebelling, insurrection, they're not going to show you it taking place in America. So you'll have like William Marshall, as I said, when he did Lydia Bailey. That's part of the Toussaint Louverture story. That's over in Haiti. Caribbean, I mentioned Caribbean. That's in the Caribbean. When we had the Mau Mau's, South Africa.
Right. Now those movies were made in the 50s or so when colonized countries with black folks were starting to find their liberation. So those American films like that were made to sort of echo what was going on then. And I feel like this movie's right on time. I mean, there's very specific lines and moments in the movie that almost point directly to the type of injustices that are being done against blacks, specifically black men, today. You know, this clearly has a motive and intention behind making this movie.
You know, if someone wanted to look at, you know, I always use the word dichotomy, but if we really want to examine why is a film like this being produced, where some of the other films we talk about clearly they work on a white savior or magic Negro perspective, where that's what we get predominantly, the iteration of blacks from that perspective, where this kind of image is clearly an anomaly. What's going to overshadow the rare, rebellious, insurrectionist black in Nat Turner is the Mr. Church, the same different as me. These kind of films where you're seeing basically blacks who are noble savages, safe Negroes. Not to say that they're going along with the system, but their reaction to it is maybe a huff and a puff, but nothing like what is happening where, let's say, with all of the killing that's going on, that many feel is unjustified police abuse, and then there was some response where some cops were being shot. That's scary. So one of the things you're going to get in this film, once again, it's not contemporary, but it brings up the horrors of what black men and women are facing in a racist society. But they're going to show you, if you fight against it from a militaristic perspective, there are consequences.
Right. But I think everybody who sacrificed their lives in this insurrection knew the consequences and were willing to pay the price. It's just a piece of history that really hasn't been told before. It's not, you don't hear about Nat Turner in history books in middle school or anything like that. But specifically, let's look at some of the other things that are going on in the movie. I mean, Nat Turner, it's sort of like some people say it's like a superhero origin story. I think Charlemagne the God, like from the first scene, he's seen as a young boy and he's marked, and they're told that he has these marks on his chest are very specific.
Yeah, well, he's got 3 marks. Pretty much the shaman, the African shaman, is saying one is for courage, one is for wisdom, and the other one is for vision. And here is someone who is, because of these marks, he's truly going to be a prophet, a leader. And that comes to pass with someone, how no one knows, had the gift to read. And if anyone knows the history of slavery, the one thing you didn't want to teach blacks was what?
How to read.
How to read.
Right.
But it's a gift.
Right. There's a great scene in the movie where the boy, he's curious, he steals a book and he's learning on his own to read, and then somebody takes him in to a library and says, no, these books are for the white people. This is the book that you're going to read. Right. And it's
And what book is that?
It's the Holy Bible.
the Bible. So right away, he's not allowed to touch the forbidden fruit. That, you know, there are little religious allusions to Jesus Christ, to the origins, but right there, that's this this little Eden. That's very Edenish, where of all the trees, you're not to touch the tree of knowledge. Oh no, you can't touch these books. That's for white folks. But what I'm going to give you is the Bible. And if you know anything from a communistic perspective, the Bible and religion has always been considered from the communist perspective as what? The opiate of the people. It's a way, as I mentioned in an earlier telecast, they used the Bible. The missionaries were sent over. They go over, teach you the Bible. They come back with the land, and the Native Americans and the Africans, they're left with the Bible. But when they're taught the Bible, they're taught to read certain passages or to know certain passages from the Bible. And as I said before, they're teaching, the missionaries are teaching, love your oppressor. If anything is done by your oppressor, do what?
Turn the other cheek.
Turn the other cheek.
Right. And so he's brought in, he becomes, over time, he becomes a paid preacher. Like he travels around to the different plantations and the slave owners, I guess, they have the belief that if he just speaks the word from the Bible, that he can help keep the other slaves in their place.
Well, here's what's important. Get away from that crap we've been fed through American cinema that the slave was a happy darky. No. Anyone being subjected to that abuse, you know they're going to want to get out of it. There were things that would keep them very circumspect about having those kind of feelings, because first of all, you had to have a pass if you got too far from the plantation. You didn't know the land. Where were you going to go? Because if you were there, you were a slave. So if you ain't got papers to say otherwise, you was a dead Nigger.
Right, and even if you do have the papers, you're still subject to the terrorism that the slave owner, and we see that in one of the scenes.
So historically, you had a lot of slaves ready to go buck wild. A lot of slaves did go buck wild. There were numerous insurrections. How do we quiet these SOBs down? They take someone like Nat Turner, and you see it all the time with conservatives. You know, as I say, Ann Coulter, what she say, our blacks are better than their blacks. So what better optic than someone to tell you to accept your condition? It sounds better to hear it from someone who's in the same condition as you. But if we're going to have this black man go and use the Bible to quell any idea of insurrection, it was made clear to him, you better only quote those passages from the Bible that support your condition.
Now, we don't have much time left. We'll discuss this many, many more times. But, I mean, you're saying in the car, we haven't really talked about this yet, but you said that Nate Parker has obviously done his research. I mean, what are some of the things that stood out to you?
Well, if you watch this film, it's clear. Kudos to Nate. Nate did not use this BS, this Pulitzer Prize winning, and I say Pulitzer because it's almost like you want to spit, but William Styron, his Nat Turner was the big thing, the big talk. You had a book in response to it. People can go look it up.
1967. I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me.
10 black writers respond to William Styron's Nat Turner. It's all fiction. And even Thomas Gray, who took the confession from Nat Turner, that's specious, okay? They wanted to dehumanize Nat Turner, the same thing they wanted to do with John Brown. make John Brown out to be a fanatic. Well, the same thing they wanted to do with Nat Turner. He was a fanatic. Oh, if someone rebels against something, you don't want to leave a legacy that they rebelled against a system because it was atrocious, it was abusive, it was something where blacks had to see their women taken from them, they had to see their friends murdered, families separated. That's not enough to make you upset?
Sold from plantation to plantation.
Yes. So the thing is, the easiest thing to do to kill a legacy is to make the person out to be some kind of fanatic. Mm-hmm. That's what they'll do. But
yeah. And there's actually an interesting thing. I don't know how many people watching have Amazon Prime, but there's a great documentary that Charles Burnett did where he interviews William Styron, and I guess from his white male perspective in reading the initial confessions of Nat Turner, which were written by a white lawyer and said to be what he said. You know, that those words could only come from the mind of a fanatic from his perspective. So he set out to make him a crazed man who, but yeah. So in this movie,
so what I loved,
very well organized.
Yeah, what I loved about this film is that this whole infatuation that is throughout the Styron book about Nat Turner, you don't get that with Nate Parker's Nat Turner.
No white women in this one.
Oh, the tribute that you would have for this film, because there are elements of Django in this film. He's done his research, and I'm glad he didn't use Styron.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so last thing other than the obvious circumscribed historicity, you know, do you feel like there's other overt instances of technology in the film, like things? I mean, now clear, and I should make clear, like if you bring up Django, like I couldn't tell you how many people after Django came out were walking around saying, "Wow," because it was so well done a film. That really happened. There really was a slave like Django who rescued his woman and blew up a plantation. I said, no, that's pure fiction. And we should just be clear that other than the insurrection, the fact of the insurrection and maybe one or two other details, this is completely Nate Parker's imagination, correct?
Here's my point in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Nat Turner is what I call circumscribed historicity. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he wasn't heroic, he wasn't true, he wasn't a real person, but his heroism is tempered, it's moderated, it's conditioned by what happened to him. His response was not successful. Yes, he killed a few whites, but his actions cost many, many more deaths to blacks, okay? Django was not circumscribed historicity. So because it was the ideology of someone creating a fantastical black man, because it's not limited by history, we can have Django do things that you can't see a real person do and get away with it, with the exception of maybe a few, like a Toussaint Louverture, whom we haven't really gotten, except for in Lydia Bailey.
Mm-hmm. And the French miniseries. But you know, are there other things that stood out to you? I mean, you know, we're in terms of breaking down the story. Like I think something that's definitely in the air in 2016 is the breaking down of the illusion. I mean, we've heard Baba Dick talk about it. I mean, I know people get on me about these cartoons, but I think you see it in Zootopia and Sausage Party, where they're using those like Sausage Party specifically as an attack to me on organized religion, just as this is saying, he's interpreting in Nat Turner that for every line in the Bible that says "stay in your place," there's a line that says "wreak vengeance."
Well, that's a powerful scene where, because I can read the Bible, I know about the text that says, love those who treat you badly, as well as I know about those texts that says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I can read the whole Bible. I'm not memorizing which parts you taught me to know.
Right.
Okay? But here's the thing. We don't get the level of atrocity, black against white, as we get white against black. Same thing happens with sexuality. You're not going to get a black man having a love scene with a white actress the way you'll have a love scene with a white guy having a love scene with a Halle Berry. Completely different. Why? Because it's still about movies are not made for black folk. They're not made to please black folk. They're only made to calm black folk down. And they don't want to upset white folk.
See, I would, your premise I always hold true, but I think this film's a little different because I think it's pulling the crust off the third eye for a lot of people because it's reinforcing with images our connectedness to the world. It's saying, break free of the illusion. What you have, you were born with, and it's in some ways he's liberating. Even if it's for one day, these people feel liberated, and they connect to things that either were taken from them or that they didn't necessarily feel that they had. So just as Nat was marked as somebody with vision, I think he was able to share with others the fact that that they themselves are free. No?
The trigonology is this.
Okay.
It's an illusion. What you think you're getting, that's on a superficial level. What you're really getting is subtle. It's below the consciousness. They're encoding a message that if you react, if you don't get it, if it doesn't resonate with you on a visceral, superficial level, it's there in a subtle way. You can react to the abuse, but you will pay for those transgressions. That's the message. That message is evident with what happens to Nat Turner, what happens as a consequence of what Nat Turner did to innocent blacks who didn't partake in this. Hundreds of blacks paid for that, okay? That's happened throughout history. And it's in black and white, in writing, what happened as a consequence of what Nat did. So historically, people tell you, revolutions, if they don't have an end game, if they don't end with your freedom, it's not a revolution.
Well, I don't think the movie set out to end racism or cure slavery. I think it just was using a platform to tell a different kind of story about a true American hero.
If I can put a film together that its overall message is that it works on a cathartic level, in other words, you get some sense of justice, some sense of relief, I've won. I've given your squeaking door some oil, okay? If you have an oppressed people and you don't find a way to calm them down, you're in trouble. That's historic, okay? They'll tell, first of all, which slave masters were having problems with their slaves?
The ones that were treating them the worst.
Thank you. Case closed.
All right, so there's payment due. We did the podcast where we talked about Nate's situation, skeletons from his past coming back. I mean, after being aware of those skeletons seeing the film, do you think? I mean, I you know, obviously it was going to come. It was coming. You know, he wasn't making Ride Along 3, so they're gonna do whatever they can to keep people from wanting to see it. Does after seeing the film, have your opinions changed in any way, or after hearing what Mr. Parker has had to say in recent interviews?
I applaud Nate Parker for someone, I said this before, looking at his work, I can see this is a brother his consciousness is way high. He's doing the research. This film is evident of a man who did a lot of research into our history, and I applaud him for this work. But he's limited because he's in a society that is a white supremacist society, and it's going to be conditioned. What I want to see is that we make our own films that are revolutionary, and it's about what led to the Black is Beautiful movement, what killed it, how we can regenerate that spirit again, and how we can engender it where it can sustain itself, and we can have films that we have Black people about solutions that will end the problems and the conditions that we're suffering now.
Well, amen to that. That'll be the last word. So, thank you again for coming down, spending time.
Thank you, my brother.
Shout out to Bill on the Wheels of Steel or shooting the camera. So, hopefully you will have had a chance already to see this movie. I don't think we gave too much away. There's some details that I don't even bring them up. But please, and be respectful in your comments in terms of spoilers for people who haven't seen it yet. But please, we welcome your opinion, your thoughts. I mean, this is going to be a conversation that we're going to continue to have well up until Oscar Day. And I mean, I would say in retrospect of seeing the film, I think I take back what I said about him not getting nominations. I think it would be criminal for this movie not to be recognized for the piece of art that it is. And but I do wish I would feel I don't have a lot of confidence in the way at this point as we're talking, it's like late August, the way the studio is handling the PR and the damage control on this, and I think that's why we wanted to get on early and just let people know that this is a solid film.
Well, when the film comes on, they quote which president, the third president of the United States?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anyone say because of the true past of Thomas Jefferson, we're going to start asking that all of the accolades we had for him and the other slave-holding presidents, that be withdrawn.
Right.
Okay? We've spoken about Nate Parker. Hopefully he's learned from that experience. He's trying to make some recriminations. Let's not get too caught up in killing this film because of something that none of us really know what happened. Let's give him a pass on this film is well made. It's going to be deserving of Oscar nominations. That's for sure.
Yeah. So go see it October. I think it's October 7th, if I'm not mistaken. Birth of a Nation, and that's our special podcast. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. Please don't re-upload because I'll have to shut you down. I hate being the bad guy. But like, comment, share, subscribe. Let people know about what we're doing here on our channel, and see you again soon.
Peace and blessings, and once again, we're not complaining, just explaining.